Hey guys, welcome back. Glad to have you here. Week 3 is in the books, and I gotta say, some exciting stuff happened, man. So let's get right into it. The Jets beat the Patriots. Got to see the old Aaron Rodgers back. That was nice to see. Me and my friend are talking up. It's nice we see. He's slinging the ball. He's making the right reads. Defense is playing strong. It was nice, you know. It's like I kind of missed that. But Pittsburgh goes to 3-0 after beating the Chargers. Wasn't expecting Pittsburgh to be 3-0. Probably 1-2, but I still expect them to finish at a 500, like over 500. It's been consistent like that every year. Minnesota threw down on Houston. Holy smokes! Was not expecting a blowout. They beat them so bad they sent them all the way back to 2002 as the expansion Texans. That's how bad it was. But if you ask Minnesota fans, they're not taking anything for granted. They uh, don't think they're the real deal just yet. They want to face the Packers. The Packers is the main game. They beat the Packers, then they will say it's a real deal. But I had to do some double check. I forgot Brian Flores ended up being the defensive coordinator for the uh, Vikings. So yeah, you know that defense is going to be in tip top shape. But yeah, that makes me get excited for that Packers Vikings game next week 4. Philadelphia, New Orleans. Philly beats New Orleans, but New Orleans came back down to earth. But Philly couldn't get the ball going, so it's kind of a defensive battle neck and neck until Saquon Barkley broke open basically in the fourth quarter. Got the rushes, so he set up the points, scored the touchdown, and yeah. So uh, Denver upsets Tampa Bay. That was shocking. I'm in pick'em leagues. Could not we all picked Tampa to win, and I'm sure a lot of other people did too. Was not expecting Denver to put something together and blow out the 2-0 Bucks. Uh, Green Bay and Tennessee. This was the Malik Willis game. For those who don't know, Malik Willis got traded from the Titans to the Packers earlier this year. And now since Jordan Love's hurt, Malik Willis is the starter. Jordan Love played like limited practice last week, but Malik Willis still got the start and he balled out. Oh yeah, it's nice though. It was nice, but at the same time, I made a bet with my wife. Loser wears the other team's shirt basically, so I had to wear a Packer shirt for the remainder of the day. I hated it, but it was like I had to honor it. So the Giants upset the Browns. I was not expecting that at all either. I didn't think I figured Malik Willis. Wow, uh, Neighbors would go off here, and he did. And I was not expecting to torch him this bad though, and I was expecting defense to basically collapse here, and but they got to get that fixed together. But Neighbors is the real deal, definitely in the running for Rookie of the Year with another guy who we'll get to later. Uh, Bears and Colts. Didn't really like this game as much, but if I had to put something down, Caleb Williams actually had a pretty solid game. 33 for 52. I mean, a lot of passes and all, but 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Kind of solid, but interceptions, of course, cost you a little bit. Um, and then Carolina against Vegas. Panthers got their first win. Who knew? Maybe it was a quarterback change, but I'm holding off on the brakes just a little bit, and here's why. And it was a stat that I saw after the game started, and otherwise I would have probably changed it to Panthers winning. Andy Dalton all time against the Raiders, 64 for 95, 716 yards, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 117, I believe, for the QB rating. He's also 4-0. Okay, which means if he's consistent, he's not going to throw picks against the Raiders. He's going to get the ball to his number one receiver. He always does, which in this case was Deontay Johnson, who had himself a day. And now Thielen is out, so could be more targets to him. But it's something with the Raiders. He just has this, I don't know if it's something with the eyes or he's comfortable, but he seems to do his thing against the Raiders. So I'm seeing on this next game. Let's see what this next game holds. And if he has another good game, then maybe it is a quarterback issue. But not holding up anything here. Seattle beat Miami. Kind of hard to do it. The defense for Miami played pretty good, though. A lot of 3-and-outs for us. but the offense couldn't really do anything with it. But Seattle's 3-0 was unexpected, 3-0 sitting at the top of the division. Baltimore, Dallas. This was a key one that Baltimore needed to get a win for, and they did. They basically held Dallas, like they shut down Dallas's offense until the fourth quarter. Dallas offense drove down the field, scored, onside kick, got the ball again, scored again. That's basically it. They still won in a close game. It was a Derrick Henry show for Baltimore, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Detroit and Arizona. Detroit 20, Arizona 13. Close game. Was expecting it to be more high scoring, but that's all right. But the fun thing about this game was the hook and ladder. The throw to St. Brown and then pitch it out to Gibbs, and who walked right into the end zone, basically. That was a blast. That was fun. Kind of excited for that one. But I was more excited in this next game, the Rams versus the 49ers. 49ers had a lead and blew it in the fourth quarter, as usual. But that's not why I'm excited about it. Jauan Jennings, 11 receptions, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns. Have yourself a day, sir. Felt like Randy Moss, and he even had a Randy Moss thing where he mossed that one defender. Man, he played lights out. He's good in the playoffs. This is, you think it would be the Brandon Ayuk show. I mean, he basically, if he's saying he like wants a big contract and he's just as valuable as such and such, like as Devo, as Kittle, as Christian McCaffrey, or even Justin Jefferson, that time was your chance to prove it, and you didn't prove it. It's like, so, but either way, I'll see what situation happens in that. They could end up trading him. Who knows? Buffalo and Jacksonville. This one was over before I even began. It was like a tank versus a Dixie Cup. Who do you think's going to win? Buffalo beat the brakes off Jacksonville. Josh Allen basically had 30 fantasy points by halftime. 32, I think, by halftime. And that didn't play as much in the second half because they were beating him so bad. And then Trubisky came in. Washington is against Cincinnati. This one was a sneaky game. And I loved it. It's high scoring. Jayden Daniels balled out. 21 for 23, 91%, which I think is the best ever by a rookie or something like that. It's up there. It's like top 3. It's up there. But he basically threw for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Basically ran for 39 yards. Also scored a touchdown in the rushing game too. And even did it against Cincinnati's high-powered offense. That was a nice offense to see. It was nice to have T. Higgins back. Joe Burrow seemed like the Joe Burrow of old. You throw to Jamar Chase, and Chase had his day. I mean, you had Higgins just for a little bit. They didn't play him as much. And then I forgot the guy. Well, I didn't forget the guy's name. I just can't pronounce his name. The guy that starts with an I, the receiver for the Bengals. You know what it is. So, but yeah, that was it. That's what I had. Those are the games, and they were fun. And I can't wait for football this coming Thursday, when the Giants and Cowboys meet. So, but before we go into Week 4, let's take a little recap of what happened in Love for the Game. So, in Love for the Game, we had a huge trade go down today. And I'm talking huge. The best way to describe it is actually what Birds Abides, a team in our league, a manager in our league, said. Whoa. Yeah. And when I show you here this trade, I think you're going to say whoa too. Ricky Bobby traded Bijan Robinson, Michael Pittman, and Isaiah Likely to Hawk Pockets for Nico Collins, Drake London, and Javonte Williams. Yeah. Whoa. And that clearly shook up the league a little bit. Now, for us, I know it's different for any other league. It all depends on how your league is. But in our league, we vote on trades. So when a trade goes through, we vote on it. And in this trade, like when we voted on it, it was basically it usually now when we vote on trades, it usually takes about like 7 hours before the votes happen because usually we're busy. But in a matter of like 5 minutes, we had the number of votes to pass through a trade for us is five. In about 5 minutes, we basically had five votes, and it passed on through. This was a very good trade. Got texts afterwards saying like, "Wow, that's a very even trade," and yeah, it's pretty. I think it's pretty even. You basically have a superstar, you basically have an up and coming guy, and you basically have a guy that could provide you upside, but it's a little like kind of hard to right now. But yeah, dude, like I said, like I said, like Bird Divide says, whoa. But now let's get into the matchups. Week 3 on the books here. First matchup we're going over is Big Papa, who defeated Garrett and the Jets 122.93 to 109.84. Consider this one a little bit of an upset. Just if you look at the players, you'll see. But looks like for Big Papa, Prescott picked up in the fourth quarter and ended up with 31.86 fantasy points. Basically, 379 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7-yard carry, and a 1-yard touchdown, basically, or like a 1-yard touchdown. But Connor struggled a little bit, 3.5, only 17 yards, but a reception for 8. Detroit's line is no joke here. Aaron Jones got a lot of work. He basically was busy against Houston. Houston couldn't stop a fly. Basically had 102 yards rushing with 5 for 46 and a touchdown on the receiving end. Sam Darnold was cooking and found Jones a lot. Tyreek Hill, kind of hard with the offense. I mean, still 3 for 40, still gets you 7 fantasy points, but it's kind of hard without a quarterback at this moment. Olave had a nice game too, 6 for 86 and a touchdown. Surprised how low scoring it was. Finished with 20.6 fantasy points. Pat Freiermuth still the same, basically getting around 7 points, 4 for 33. Brian Robinson, I thought would do a little bit better. The stuff happened where it's like he got 33 yards, he got a touchdown, he got a reception for 4. Eckler went out of the game, so he should have got more work. I thought Cincinnati, maybe it's just me, but I also thought Cincinnati was pretty bad against the run. But I'll have to check some stats later on just to see. Maybe it just happens to be a bad game and he'll pick it up next time. Jake Elliott had 1 extra point and then missed the 1 field goal. I could have gave him some points. But and then the Bills, I think had the highest scoring defense this week, 15.17 after the blowout in Jacksonville. Meanwhile, on Garrett and the Jets, Josh Allen, like I said, he had 32 points, I think, right around halftime, but finished with 38.92, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns, 6 for 44 on the ground. Pollard had kind of a slower day. Packers bottled him up. Packers bottled him up. He only had 6 carries, 14 yards, and then only a few receptions for 15 yards here. Mason, I think, underperformed a little bit. 77 yards is still pretty good. 19 for 77 is still pretty good. 2 for 11. He got the volume, just needed some touchdowns, it looks like. But Zay Flowers looks like was bottled up by Dallas. I thought he would do a little bit better, but carry for 3 yards and 3 for 20 and the reception aspect. Rogers to Wilson was kind of seemed like he found Wilson a lot. 5 for 33 ain't bad with the touchdown too. McBride would have had a lot more points, but he got hurt, I think, with the head injury, so we'll keep an eye on that in the reports. 5.5 fantasy points, 3 for 25. Rachaad White lost some carries to Bucky Irvin, 6 for 17, but he did have a lot of receptions, 5 for 18 yards. He got 8.5. Group, I like to call him Group. He had 2 field goals, basically. Just a couple field goals and like basically 3 points apiece. And then the Jets defense, 14.62 points in their win over the Patriots. Next, I believe this one was the game of the week, I want to say. And Ricky Bobby ended up beating Game Over for You, 121.54 to 107.63. Let's see how his new teams, like the players on his team did, because he just got some new players as well. Um, Burrow looked like Burrow, 324 yards, 3 touchdowns. To carry for 4 yards, 30.36 fantasy points. Singletary had himself kind of a good game, a little over 4 yards a carry, 65 yards, a touchdown, 4 receptions, and 43 yards. But he did have that fumble he lost. So 19.8 fantasy points. Devon Achane, I thought would have had a bigger game here. Yes, I know Seattle. I didn't think Seattle's defense was okay, but I figured he would get a lot more work, to keep Skylar Thompson, like get him like comfortable, get him like a little more confident. Side notes, probably don't care, but I thought they should have kept Mike White and released Skylar Thompson. If they're only keeping 2 quarterbacks, I thought Mike White was better. Mike White seemed to understand a little bit better. He proved it on the Jets. Definitely proved it with the Dolphins. So, but I'm surprised that he was released. But I think Mike White could have did some damage here. Nico Collins, only 12.6 points. He only had 10 targets. He was basically smothered, but 4 for 86 ain't bad either. And I just see that he also has Tank Dell with 5 for 62, 11.2 points. See, he got a little bit better this week. It was sort of his turn. All the receivers for them did pretty well. But who knows? Ricky Bobby, maybe he'll try to trade for CJ Stroud, complete the triple stack. Just saying. It'll be interesting. Brock Bowers, 7.1. Kind of hard to play, like 3 for 41, still pretty good. But again, it's Carolina. Carolina, it seems like they sparked some energy and were able to shut down that offense where they had to go to their backup quarterback here, which then he was, I don't think, a non-factor. I think non-factor because I know he backup quarterback usually goes to Jacoby Myers. So anytime he's in, it's like Myers is going to have a good game. Drake London had himself a good game. 6 for 67 and a touchdown here for 18.7 fantasy points. Younghoe Koo had 7 points. I basically had a field goal from 50 plus, a couple extra points here. And then Houston's defense, again, we all weren't expecting this to go down, 5.98. Probably should have been a little bit higher but it's all good. It's fine. So for game over for you, Lamar Jackson, it was Lamar Jackson, 27.98. All right, he only threw 15 passes, completed completed 80% of his passes still. That's pretty good. 182 yards and a touchdown, but then carried a lot. They ran all over this Dallas team. Henry and Jackson went all over this Dallas team. 87 yards and a touchdown, too. Breece Hall did pretty well in this game, too. 54 yards and a touchdown, then 4 receptions for 29 yards for 18.3 fantasy points. Travis Etienne still got a pretty solid amount of touches. I mean, 11 for 68 is pretty efficient. 4 for 17 ain't bad either, 12.5. But again, you're down by a lot, so you're not going to play the whole game when it's a blowout. But I still think no, he wasn't for that whole game because they brought in their backup quarterback and he was still on there. Gabe Davis was still out there. Kirk was on there. The guy found Kirk a lot. But then let's see, Mike Evans, Denver played defense, shut him down. 2 for 17. They didn't let basically deep balls go by, but they had a game plan. And then Rice, basically Pat Mahomes' favorite target. A lot of us started to predict that he'd go off this year, and he was reached way early than usual. But he had 12 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown, had a carry for 1 yard, but 30.10 fantasy points definitely will get you to go off. And Kittle, probably last minute scratch, but didn't realize he wasn't playing. I'm sure that'll change this week. Jameson Williams, 1 for 9. Again, wasn't really like, it was more, I think they took away the big play, and St. Brown was open a lot. One reception, 9 yards, 1.2 fantasy points because he had the 1 carry for -7 yards. And then Boswell had another 7-point game. He missed the 1 field goal, which will put him in the double digits, but still not bad, pretty good. He's still reliable. And then San Francisco would have had a higher score if they didn't blow the lead. So But still 6.81, about where your projection was for this one here. Then we had unfinished business. We had Hertz beating unfinished business 142.02 to 133.05. These two were the top scorers of the week. And it stinks that like when you score 133 points and then lose. But that's, fantasy football. Derek Carr, Jordan Love still hurt, so he had to start Derek Carr. Still had 142 yards, a touchdown, a couple carries for 3 yards. Only 9.98 fantasy points. But yeah, it came down to earth. A little inconsistent, but should still be good down the road. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe it's just a first 2-game high or whatever. But with all the receivers gone, they basically ran the ball a lot. 24 carries ain't bad either. 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then a couple of receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. Gave him 31.60 fantasy points. Cook still did pretty well. He scored another touchdown. So 39 yards and a touchdown on the rushing aspect, and then 4 for 48 in the backfield. St. Brown did his thing, 7 for 75 and a touchdown for 20.50 fantasy points. Rashid Shaheed, had 5 targets, didn't get a connect. Didn't connect at all with them, but a couple throws downfield that if he would have caught, he would have basically made the double digits and have basically beat his projection. And then Zach Ertz did pretty well, 5 for 38, 8.8 fantasy points. The tight end's pretty skim at this moment, so it's still pretty good here. And then, of course, got to start Deontay Johnson, 8 for 122 and a touchdown for 27.2 fantasy points. And then Thielen's going to be, I think they said Thielen was going to be on injury reserve, so it could be more targets for Deontay Johnson too. And then Myers had 7 points. He did miss that 1 field goal, which would have put him in double digits. But still, he's been in, I think in a top 5 when it comes to making field goals and stuff the past 3 years, so he's still consistent. And then the Chargers here, only 9.27 fantasy points. Got some 3 and outs, made a lot of tackles, got an interception, and deflected some passes as well. But still with the loss to Pittsburgh. And then for Hurts, we did have Hurts the quarterback here. You still had a solid game when it came to passing, just needed to capitalize on touchdowns. So you're 29 for 38, which is still pretty good. 311 yards is still pretty good. He did throw the 1 pick. He did carry for 25 yards. He lost 1 of the fumbles, but he was sacked 4 times. New Orleans defense seems like it's legit, even when the offense is not working. So if you're looking for the defense to host, maybe those are the guys. And then, like I said earlier, Derrick Henry, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception for 23 yards for 31.4 fantasy points. And then David Montgomery had himself a game. They basically went back to the basics in that game. Rushing had a lot of rushes that game for the Lions did, which we'll get to Gibbs later on too. But 23 carries, still pretty solid, 105 yards and a touchdown, and a few receptions for 17 yards gives him 22.2 fantasy points. Ja'Marr Chase had himself a day. Joe Burrow looked like himself, 6 for 118 and 2 touchdowns for 30.08 fantasy points. Stephon Diggs, I heard a lot of talk into where it's okay, this could be the game that Stephon Diggs breaks out a little bit in. And yeah, he still had a pretty solid game. 10 receptions for 94 yards. No touchdowns. He did have a completion, though. Oh, who did he throw to? I don't think it was Akers. It was the guy behind him. A Google Way or something like that. Maybe. I don't remember. But 19.92 fantasy points. Parkinson did get five targets, but only 3 receptions for 21 yards. San Francisco does shut down the tight ends a little bit. Pickens went 5 for 57. Pretty good, solid day with 10.7 fantasy points here. Jason Sanders missed the 1 field goal, but he did get the other field goal and got 2 fantasy points. Hopefully, Huntley coming in, hopefully maybe it'll be a little bit better. Then Miami's defense was kind of solid. 9.96 fantasy points, but they forced a lot of 3 and outs. They did have a little bit of tackles. They deflected the passes. They did defense. It's just the offense. Like I said, the offense couldn't get anything. So there's that. And then America beat Witch Nasty here, 118.36 to 112.14. A pretty solid game here. Pat Mahomes had 21.38 fantasy points, 26 for 39, 217, 2 touchdowns, interception, but still had 6 carries for 17 yards. He didn't throw as much in the second half. I believe he had 27 pass attempts by the first half, which you noticed. I was like, wow, that's a lot of passes. But I think they saw that too and decided to hold up on him a little bit as well. Jonathan Taylor had himself a game, got over 20 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did get a reception for that big game against the Vikings for 25 yards, but that brings it to 27.5 points. Alvin Kamara still had a lot of carries, 87 yards, and then 3 for 40. Got a lot more carries, especially Taysom Hill out this game. And then Brandon Cooks, 2 for 16 against Baltimore here. Cooper against the Giants. You want to pass against the Giants. Cooper had a good game here, 7 for 86 and 2 touchdowns for 27.6 fantasy points. Hopefully they can keep it up with that. I mean, they are going against Vegas this week, which is I think one of the worst when it comes to like giving up fantasy points to the receivers and receptions and receiving yards. So hopefully they could put together some back-to-back weeks here. And then Ferguson's coming back from injury, goes 6 for 95 off 11 targets here, 15.5 fantasy points. Yeah, picking up right where he left off. Calvin Ridley, they shut down Calvin Ridley a little bit because he's been going off for the Titans. Only 1 carry for 9 yards. But they did say that Tennessee also said that DeAndre Hopkins was going to start getting a little bit more involved. We knew he was hurt. They were kind of easing his way into it. They gave him a bigger role, and he delivered on that bigger role. So I think they're going to see that as, okay, we can start giving him more and more. So he could probably still get some more targets and another big game maybe. But we'll see on that. Tucker, he went 4 for 4 on the extra points, but that one key, they still won. But he missed the one field goal. It was kind of surprising. It's like, oh no, he missed again. I mean, every player is going to have one bad season. And I could think of Mason Crosby, for instance, where Mason Crosby had that one bad season for the Packers. They still kept him. And when next year hit, he was fine. So it's like everyone's going to have that bad season. But I know I would think they'd be smart enough to keep Tucker and all that. Or who knows, maybe he's hurt and they just need to check on him too. Dallas defense played pretty poorly. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But 2.18 fantasy points here. But it's not going to complain when you're winning. You're still winning the games. But we got Witch Nasty here. Anthony Richardson. 167, 2 interceptions, 8 for 24 and a sack. I dipped my toes in the water a little bit, but now I'm out. It just seems like if you can beat him with the deep ball, he's going to have his game. They shut down the deep ball. He hasn't really done much since. He's going to have to start running the football more, but maybe I'll cut him a little bit of slack, a little bit, not much, just because of Chicago's defense. They are pretty solid. They're still pretty solid. And then Mixon did not was out this week, so he substituted a running back in McLaughlin. Only 5 carries for 7 yards, but he did sneak the rushing touchdown in. He also got a reception for 7 yards, 8.4 fantasy points. And then Chuba Hubbard seemed to benefit from Andy Dalton being the starter quarterback. 21 carries, 114 yards. Did see 5 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown here, so that brings him up to 28.9 fantasy points. CeeDee Lamb, 4 for 67. He did have the 1 fumble, 9.7 fantasy points. He would have had 10. But Baltimore's still pretty tough defense. But yeah, they got to do something. That offense got to click. But looking at the schedule, it was hard. It's hard for like the first 4 or 5 weeks, but then you look at the schedule towards the end, like the receiving and for the quarterbacks too. It's a lot of green. We'll just say that, a lot of green. Then Devontae Adams, 4 for 40. Carolina had a little bit of juice, kind of shut down everything, but a couple quarterbacks here. But we'll see how they fare against Cleveland next week. Dalton Schultz, only 2 for 11 yards, only 3.1 fantasy points. Malik Neighbors had himself a game. He basically did a little bit of everything. He passed once, ran a couple times. He had 8 receptions for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, so like 28.2 fantasy points. Aubrey, still another double-digit game. Basically found him with 11 points here. Couple 50-yard bombs. Or no, actually, like a 60-yard bomb. Yeah, because he had a 50, a 60. But I don't think it counts the 60s as 6 points. I believe I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure if it does, I mean, because if it does count this, if it does count the 60 as 6, this should be 12 points because you have the extra point, you have the 6 for the field goal, and then a 50 for the for 5 to 59 is 5 points here. But if it's not, then okay, then it's 11. But then the Eagles defense kind of shut them down a little bit. Didn't really do much. I mean, they had a couple 3 and outs, a little 4th down stop. Did allow just 12 points, had the interception in the win over New Orleans here. And then came another undefeated matchup, but this time in a low-scoring affair where Saquon defeated Bird Abides 111.23 to 102.30. Saquon is the only undefeated team left in the league, in our league. So we'll see how far he can make it. I believe, I'd have to do double check, but I'm pretty sure the highest somebody's ever gotten a win streak is like 9. Or like, it might have been 6 or 7 to start the year. But I think someone has gotten 9 before. I'll double check. But either way, it's late. So for Bird Abides, Kyler Murray, 16.78 fantasy points. Basically 21 completions, 270 yards and a touchdown. A little interception there too. He had 5 carries for 45 yards. But Detroit basically kind of put a stop to things a little bit. Gibbs had 16 carries for 83 yards. He did have that touchdown, that 20-yard touchdown, basically off that hook and ladder. So that's why the 20 is there. That's why you don't see a reception at all. And then Ford had yards per carry is kind of a little bad, but 37 yards ain't bad. But a few receptions for 33 yards, it still gets you down the field and all that. So then we have Harrison. Still did pretty good. 5 for 64 in a touchdown, 17.4 fantasy points. He's starting to get in. He's starting to be more consistent. Then JSN had 6.9 fantasy points with 3 for 39. Didn't really have to do much against Miami. Miami's still a pretty tough team, but I mean, when Miami's not scoring points, you can run the ball a little bit more. Then Kyle Pitts had a couple big catches, a big catch, like 2 for 59 yards here, 7.9 fantasy points. But Kansas City's defense is usually pretty good against the tight end. DJ Moore, 8 receptions for 78 yards, 15.2 fantasy points. Fairbairn missed the 1 field goal, but had the extra point at 0. Definitely going to be a bounce back game for him, no question about that. Pittsburgh also had 11.82 fantasy points. They did get some sacks in there, forced the fumble even, had a lot of 3 and outs, forced the Chargers to go a lot 3 and out. Deflected a pass here and there too in their win over the Chargers. And then for Saquon, CJ Stroud couldn't really do nothing. 215 yards, a touchdown. Had a few carries for 12 yards, but he got sacked a lot back there. Saquon Barkley is the only consistent one for that game for the Eagles. 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion. He had 4 receptions for 9 yards. And then Josh Jacobs, Tennessee shut him down on the run. 14 for 43. Only like 3 yards a carry, basically, and then 1 reception for 5 yards. 5.8, not 8-0. Basically, Malik Willis took over. They were like, okay, I don't think they were expecting Malik Willis to run all over them. They were going to force him to pass, but basically he ran all over them. So, and then Devontae Smith, 7 for 79. He did take that hit, which forced him out the game, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see if they let him play this week or they rest him a week because they're already out AJ Brown. But who knows? Maybe AJ Brown can come back this week. We'll see. And holy smokes, talk about Dallas Goedert, man. But either way, Chris Godwin still doing Chris Godwin things. He's been dominant ever since he's been put in the slot. 6 for 53 and a touchdown, 17.3 fantasy points. Mark Andrews, yeah, you got me. I got nothing. I try to do something here. Mark Andrews didn't do jack. I don't know if that was on purpose. He could still be hurt. I couldn't tell you, man. You got me. J.K. Dobbins, 15 for 44, only a few yards of carry. Pittsburgh's defense was stout. 3 receptions for 10 yards. But also, I think that's a little bit on Herbert, because Herbert basically played hurt. Then Butker basically made his field goals, missed the 1 extra point, but still had 12 fantasy points. And then Baltimore's defense was doing fine, double digits fantasy points, but until Dallas broke out in the fourth quarter, but finished with 8.43, still got the win though. And the last game of the evening, Hawk Pockets with his new squad defeated Gritty Fly 123.84 to 104.86. Sam Darnold. He started Sam Darnold, took out Herbert, so I didn't trust him, picked up Sam Darnold, threw him in there. 181, 4 touchdowns, very efficient for 27.24 fantasy points. Austin Eckler, 3 for 35 on his carries for a touchdown, then 2 for 22 for 13.7 fantasy points. Probably would have had more because they didn't have an answer for him, but he got hurt and was forced out of the game. And then Swift, 13 for 20. Yeah, he could not get going. But 2 for 22. I mean, kind of stayed a little bit, kind of an average, like 6.2 fantasy points. Justin Jefferson, they couldn't stop Justin Jefferson. 6 for 81 and a touchdown. Yeah, with the quad issue, but it seemed like it was no effect here. Brandon Ayuk, I mean, he got 10 targets. I mean, it was 5 for 48, but unfortunately couldn't get any touchdowns for 9.8 points. That's a bummer. Travis Kelce, 4 for 30 for 7 points. We said that at the beginning when I was talking about this during when we had our draft, that they were going to cut back his workload and save him for the playoffs. So, and they've been doing that. And I'm sure they'll give us some more catches, so when Taylor comes, she can just watch him catch the football. Yay! And all that stuff. Either way. Higgins returned. Gave him 6 targets, only 3 for 39. So 6.9. I was sure they're going to ease him back in, and I'm sure he'll get way more targets. McPherson, he had that 1 missed field goal, but still hit on his extra points. Would have had a double-digit performance here. And, of course, Tampa, 5.92. I mean, nobody expected Denver. We'll just be honest. Nobody expected Denver to win, and especially in this blowout. So they could have had double-digit points. But, unfortunately, that's fantasy. That's football for you. So 5.92 fantasy points. And then for Hawk Pockets, Jaden Daniels. Yeah, here we go. 21, like I said earlier, 21 for 23, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12 carries, 39 yards, and a touchdown for 30.06 fantasy points. Welcome to the NFL, Jaden Daniels. And then Bijan Robinson. New Bijan Robinson. Kansas City shut down. Kansas City is a good defense. They basically shut down the run, forced Kirk Cousins to pass more. 16 for 31 and a touchdown, though. He did get the touchdown. But then he had a couple of receptions for 21 yards. And then I realized too that on Hawk Pockets' team, he also has Christian McCaffrey. So yeah, that's going to be fun when he comes back, if he comes back. Ramondre Stevenson, 6 carries for 23 yards, still kind of efficient, almost 4 yards a carry. But the Jets basically stuffed them. They basically forced them to pass. Couldn't really do much. But only 1.3 fantasy points. Definitely, I think it'll be a bounce-back game for sure. DK Metcalf, 4 for 104 and a touchdown. Got himself open on the 1 pass. 21.4 fantasy points. Xavier Worthy, 3 carries for 13 yards, couple receptions for 17 yards. Should have had more. There was a couple times where it seemed like he was going to break free, but then he would get tackled. And And then Dalton Kincaid, finally, we see Dalton Kincaid get double-digit fantasy points, 13.10, 3 for 41, and that touchdown after Josh Allen rolled out to the right, basically, and found him in the back of the end zone. Zach Charbonnet, 18 for 91, couple touchdowns, 3 for 16 on the reception end for 25.70 fantasy points, which that's showing that the future's looking nice here in a little bit. And then Moody, there's the one field goal, definitely was costly because that could have taken the game in overtime, but who knows? That could have swung momentum too. Made all of his extra points for 5 fantasy points. And then Cleveland still had a solid day. I mean, still forced a couple fumbles, got the fumble recovery, had a bunch of 3 and outs, still made a lot of tackles, still a lot of pass defense. So for 9.08 fantasy points here. All right, on to the weekly reports. As you can see here, the best scoring team was Hurts with 142.02. And then the worst scoring team was Bird Bides with 102.30. For players of the week, we got for quarterback, for starters, and this is just for starters, for out of all the people in our league, Josh Allen had 38.92 fantasy points. Saquon Barkley led all running backs with 34.60. Jamar Chase led receivers with 30.80. Ferguson led with 15.50 for all tight ends. And for kickers, Butker led with 12 fantasy points. And what you not see on this list, I couldn't get it in, was the Buffalo Bills led all defensive guys with 15.17 fantasy points. And then just a little bit here. Okay, and then as you can see, for the bench warmers of the week, for quarterbacks, it was Brock Purdy with 37.78. For running backs, it was Zach Moss with 20.70. For receivers, that stinks. I mean, he still won. The guy still won in the league. Kyle has him. But Jawan Jennings had 47.50. And then for tight ends, Dallas Goedert had 28 points in the bench warmers. And then for league awards, we got the most efficient manager was the biggest, baddest GOAT. 104.86 out of possible based on 107 points. Or 7 points. For least efficient manager, we had, get this a little bit here, we had Saquon with 111 points out of a possible 182 points, basically. Highest points in the win, again, it goes to unfinished business. He had 133.05 in his loss to Hurts. And then getting another award is Saquon for but lowest points in a win with 111.23 in his win over Birds of Bites. The biggest blowouts, only it was 19 points, almost 20 points. It was Hawk Pockets in his win over Baddest Goat, basically with 123.84. And then for the narrow victory, Amarika wins with 118.36 fantasy points in his win over Butch Nasty. And then for overachiever, it's basically he had 140 for Hurts gets a award here for 142.02 fantasy points, but his starter projection was only 109. So yeah, that's a lot of points. And then for the underachiever, it was Birds of Bites. He finished with 102 points out of possible 113 for his starters. And then here is our team performance. You can take a look at it if you like. You can pause the video if you like. But basically, it starts with the highest scoring person for the week and goes down to the lowest score. The gold is basically how much the team scored this week. And then the clear or gray, if you want to say it, is the maximum amount of points they could have scored. So you can pause the video, take a look at it, zoom in if you like, and see where everyone did. Okay, so now we're taking a look at the standings here. In the first division, we got Game Over for You and Ricky Bobby, both at 2-1, followed by Unfinished Business at 0-3. Next division, we have Bird Abides leading with 2-1, followed by Hawk Pockets at 1-2, and Baddest Goat at 0-3. We have next division, Saquon, only a defeated guy left in our league at 3-0. followed by Amarika at 2-1, and Witch Nasty at 1-2. Then we have Garrett and the Jets and Hertz both have a 2-1 record, followed by Big Papa at 1-2. Now we come to our power ranking section, and what I do is I take the win-loss, basically I take the record, number of games, take the points for, points against, basically combine a little bit, throw them in together for a formula, and it spits out a score, and that is their power ranking score. So without further ado, let's show the power ranking score for coming up for week number 4. And this is the power rankings. We got Saquon leading the whole thing, jumping up 3 spots after his win, stay undefeated. He gets 1.53 score. Garrett and the Jets will take the second spot. He drops from being first last week, drops to the second spot. He had a 1.20, but did tie with another person. But his score was a 1.202. Next is Game Over For You at a 1.20. He dropped from second to third, but he tied with Garrett and the Jets, so his score in this case will be 1.201. Next is Bird Abides with the 1.19 score. He dropped from third to fourth in this here score. Next is Amarika at 1.18. Didn't really go anywhere. He was fifth last week. He's fifth this week. Sixth is Ricky Bobby at 1.17. He jumps up actually from 7th to 6th this week. Same with Hertz. He jumps up a spot. He got a 1.16 for his score. And then for 8, Hawk Pockets jumps up a spot to 0.83, but he was tied with a couple of other people. But his score was a 0.832 if you want to be technical about it. Witch Nasty took a big fall this week, -3 when it came to with the rankings. He still has a 0.83, but his score in this, he's tied with a couple other people. His score in this case was a 0.828. And then Big Papa didn't really go anywhere. Still had 10 last week, 10 this week, 0.83. Tied with a couple others, but his score in this case is a 0.825. Unfinished Business was 11 last week. He's 11 this week, but he moved up by 0.01 in his score to 0.46. And then for Baddest Goat, he didn't move anywhere, but he did also move up a point to 0.44 for his score. Okay, that's all I had for you today. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, comment if you like, what you like about the video, what could be more worked on. You can even hit the notification bell. That way you'll know when my video hits. The world's your oyster. You guys do what you do. Based on the week 4, to my guys, good luck, and may the odds ever be in your favor. And to everyone else, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.